the second. Will be there because the copper's old, right? So I'm happy to say we're going away from copper.
Yep.
We're gonna have cell and we're gonna have, fiber, and that'll be our two modes.
It'll be the way. The fiber has proved a little bit challenging in New Hampshire.
It's still a cable on a pole in a place where there's trees.
Yeah, because they're not gonna spend the money to shut it underground. But the weird thing is, when my town in Bedford, I was on a committee where we wanted to bring in our own fiber and be our own internet service provider, so our residents could not pay Comcast or whoever. And we, in that project, we found out that we have a state law that prohibits that.
It's funny how that works.
Yeah, and then we looked and the member of the Senate committee that controls that had a $400,000 a year donation.
Yeah. Purely coincidental, I'm sure.
Yeah, because the way they did it is, they prohibited municipalities from issuing municipal bonds.
Right.
And obviously, that's municipal bonds, the only way a town gets money. That's
Other than
how they
taxes.
take over.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, but that's never been.
Right.
Yeah,
In 1 year.
I need to take a $20-30 million loan and pay it back over 10 years, so. The way that law reads is, you can only do it if you had a service that was less than like 20 megabytes per second, which is like.
So some technical hardship that doesn't exist.
Exactly, like that was a realistic standard in the late 90s.
Yeah.
In today's day and age, that's junk, you know? So, yeah, they've got their teeth in there, it's
Yeah.
pretty good. But, you know, we'll see, so. That, it's too bad, because a lot of towns could put it on there.
At some point, I think there's a good place for capitalism in the marketplace, but maybe municipal services at some point,
Yeah,
if you're trying to lift all boats equally,
and when it's infrastructure, right?
that's what I mean.
You
Yeah.
can't always allow capitalism, but when it's infrastructure, I wanna do it. So you see it with like water companies, there's one in Tilton Northwood that is super corrupt, and they have they charge people insane connection fees. And I have clients who are building stuff and they'll deal with them. Because they're
Right.
like, hey,
Because it can't-
$30,000 well is cheaper than what they want to charge to connect to water, so. There was an argument to be had for government involvement. in
Yeah, I do think there's a role. I mean, it's interesting to watch the markets, especially when it comes to telecommunications and power and other things. Well, if you come across something that would let me get GIS layers, just let Steve know.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll ask Brendan when I get out of here and I'll see where he gets it. I just I asked for it and he gave it. I never know where he gets it. He got it.
Juliet posted here.
Thanks.
Eloise posted.
That's what happens when you're in a hurry.
Not to forget.
No, my iPad with all the stuff on it.
How you doing? Good.
I forgot my
But I
water.
remember this.
There you go. Yes.
And really think I'm out. Really.
How come his is blue and mine's white?
It's awesome, yeah, but just you.
Well, he's special. The trade copies are doing the public copies.
I think that Steve owes us a new edition maybe.
Could be.
It wasn't raining.
Yeah, I haven't heard about that one yet. There's people on there. They've done a lot of
Well, I came in just a couple minutes before and I just decided it was too stuffy in here and being. I turned on the heat gauge and not.
It's not minor.
You wanted to go and.
That took about 3 minutes for me to say. Cool.
Just sign and pass. Great. Oh, I got mine. Yeah, I see that. Nobody steals these.
Nobody would be
Thanks. Like longer guys, like now, I'll go out to the truck.
So Matt,
Hello.
yours is blue and mine's white. Must mean that Steve didn't give us our newest editions.
That's true. Use 24, 25.
23, 24.
No.
A lot of big changes.
Yeah, potentially.
So, sure.
We'll get you caught up here. Let's see what we're at.
I'm better guess.
We'll get it. Minutes from the last meeting first, before we get them done. Otherwise, they won't be done.
Sure.
So this is May 11th. You're doing the May 11th meeting?
Yeah.
Steve, the one change I had was on the second page, line 8. Of the applicant's attorney is Alexander Scott. Andrew Scott.
Thank you.
That would be in the beginning too.
And who Andrew Scott is?
Oh, yeah, good catch. Yeah, 11 on the first page.
And also in the header.
On line
Oh, no, that
14,
is line, sorry.
I think there was significant discussion about whether it really did satisfy the 50% required setback. We discussed about that the average was 10 feet, but that the closest was 9.4 feet. So maybe, I don't know whether we should change that or not. I remember Paul was talking about how if it was 45 degrees, it could be 5 and 15 and still average
Yeah.
10 and.
Why don't we just take the sentence out?
The new survey says 9.4 was the corner that was closest.
Right, I don't think we actually, reached a
Yeah.
decision on that because we didn't need to. We didn't
Okay,
get
well,
that.
then maybe maybe after the comma, that phrase should be just struck.
Because we haven't agreed.
I can take some of it, all of it, whatever you like.
I mean, I'm just, doesn't look like Dick wants that to happen.
Well, one of the requirements of the ADU would be meeting, not violating any.
So should we just strike the whole sentence, starting with though? If we're gonna be discussing it at the next meeting, then we probably shouldn't have something that already acknowledges that we think that it's 50, that it satisfies it.
Yeah, I think the path of least resistance, just get rid of the sentence.
Right, I think that's.
You could get rid of it from the comma to the end and put otherwise in front of the beginning of the sentence.
But maybe it's safer to leave the conclusions off until we have the
That's-
final hearing.
Yeah, that's probably true. I mean, we didn't decide whether it met.
Right.
The
I
requirements in
don't think
general.
we want the minutes to
Yeah.
think we went into the next meeting.
We discussed whether or not it would, but we did not. reach a
And the
decision.
only other question I have is on line 32. It says it puts us in a difficult position, and then the next sentence says denying it would send the case to the selectmen, as though that's what the difficulty is, and I don't think that is, I almost make denying the application a different paragraph.
Okay.
So it won't be, that's not the difficulty, that if.
Yeah, they are separate findings,
Yeah.
they're separate realities. I agree.
And when we're done tonight, I wanna have a conversation about what we would like to see from them. You guys have made the commitment to meet a special meeting on the 22nd. And so I want to be sure that if they're coming, they're bringing stuff that will be of value and not waste your time. But we'll do that at the end.
So, unless there's some,
Yeah, I'll make it-
make that a different paragraph, just as.
Gave it to Mrs. McGee's symbol for a new paragraph. I saw that a lot.
I move they accepted with the
Old chat GPT really cranks them out.
Second motion.
Seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. All right.
I could have been,
No, I didn't even, geez, isn't that funny? I never even, if I got on meeting, it'd be there. So the new information at the top of the file is the stuff that we got in the last couple of weeks.
Mhm.
So the visual analysis, some criteria for variances and additional information. And then I think there's a map that shows additional coverage area that's gained by, or enhanced map that shows coverage area. But that's what's new, what's posted on the web. And, we can display as needed or as directed, Dick. And we have, Peter brought a couple of pictures of his own that he had taken, that he made had me make some, I just made 3 copies, but we are also can put those up on the screen as well.
It was nice meeting you today.
For the folks in Zoom land, just be aware, some of you are not on mute, so we're hearing what you're saying.
Okay, so we can restart and pick up this, the hearing of case. What was the?
01. Your one is the
What's
one we
the
just did. Yeah, 02 is, or is it 3?
it's, well, this one's 1.
Right, yeah, it's 01. That's right.
Okay,
Because Cough is 2, but he came after. We didn't have this case last month. It
okay,
was 2 months ago.
2026-01. And so we'll continue the hearing. We have some new information from the applicant. We requested this information and hopefully it's sufficiently complete that we'll be happy with it. What we should do is treat it sort of like we would if we were starting the application, you know, but we're just gonna sort of pick up with you talking about the new information.
Sure.
And then when we're satisfied, when we feel we understand it and know what's here, we'll probably reopen, well, not reopen, but continue the public hearing. Is it reopen or not? That's a loaded word.
I think
But-
continue is fine.
yeah. So that, abutters and other residents can comment on the new information. We're gonna try not to start all over again on the public hearing. We're gonna try to keep it to the new information. So,
Okay.
the floor.
So, I guess I'll start with some of what I guess are the easier points to address. The first, batch of new information was a couple of sites that the board had asked us to evaluate as potential alternatives, and both of those sites were sort of just over the town line in Lebanon. One was an old mill site, or what you guys call the old mill site, lot 215-2. And then the other, maybe not a site, a general area, was a patch farmland. And so I asked my client about those, and he categorically told me it's just incredibly low land, and I looked into it, and yes, in fact, when you look at the topographical maps, which I included in my submission, you can see that there's kind of almost a wall there. And their estimation was it's about 300 feet lower, give or take. I mean, there's different spots you could go, but generally about 300 feet lower. And what that means is that you lose any coverage to the south by putting a site there. And if you were to look at the coverage plots, the south does have an important objective. Right on the highway, there is a spot of coverage that we're gaining to the south. And that's, of course, a primary objective. Traveling on the highway is always a primary objective of these towers. So that was how those sites were ruled out and why they're not viable sites to meet this coverage objective. The other, probably the big thing that I want to see was the visual analysis or the photo simulations. We did the balloon float and we did generate those photo simulations. I see some copies on the desk and. Steve, I don't know if you could put those on the screen if that helped or.
Yeah, I can go to let's say those are actually private photos that were taken, but we've got these here and I will share the screen once I get it up and,
I'd like to ask a question as you put these up. On the front page there, it says that there are two balloons, one's at 5 feet and one's at 2 feet diameter. Maybe you could point out where those balloons are.
I don't know that you can see the 2-foot one in any of these pictures, but I'll come up and see if I can spot them. As we're flipping through, so this actually has the tower. Yeah, this is a good.
go down a little bit, sorry.
We can start probably on the first page and walk through it, I think makes the most sense.
Okay. That won't show anything. It just, that's where the information is that I got. I wanted to. That's.
You want this? slide?
Yeah, we can start there. So these are the, obviously, this is where the proposed site is. And when they traveled through the public ways in the area, these are the locations where they were able to see the balloon. And where they photographed the balloon, and then essentially inserted a tower to scale into that spot. You all will probably be more familiar than me when you see these, and at the bottom, there should be a location on each page. That gives you a little bit better idea. So this is just existing, no tower.
I think that's the coal cornfields just over the line 11.
And that's what if you flip to the next page.
It's not talking about location, it's talking about
And I'll tell you a little trick with
Yeah.
these
no,
too.
go ahead.
So you can see it a little bit. One trick though is if instead of scrolling, you flip page to page, it almost animates it and shows it coming
And
in.
what
So,
button do you use?
so,
That was my problem.
oh.
And it may be hidden under something I can't
Oh,
minimize.
yeah. Oh, because you're using like a browser. I mean, you could, I guess, put 3 where it says 4, but.
Maybe I can click here, I don't know, we'll see.
Oh yeah, you could try that too. So try clicking on the 3 and that might like sort of animate it. Yeah, so and then click back at 4 now. And you can see how in this particular one, there's not much to see, so it doesn't animate well, but I've always found that gives you a little
Yeah.
better idea of the change. So here, I mean, you can see that it's slightly visible. It's very, very far off in the distance here, so it's not going to be terribly visible, but they were able to spot it.
Four's next.
That was 4 that were
Okay, sorry.
And then, so this is existing view at, you might want to take a look at the bottom.
This is right at the Lebanon Plainfield line, that's again the coal lane, the cornfields are back here.
Okay,
And
and then so you just click on 6. So again, you can see that this would be the antenna array right here. So, you know, it's, if you're looking for it, you will spot it, but it's not really in your face. It's not terribly obtrusive. Here you can see the balloon. I think you can just barely see the 2-foot balloon right there. I don't know if you can see it from where you're sitting.
No, I can see it. I just wanted you to point it out because I have a comment to make further.
Okay, and this is obviously the large balloon.
That's your background, John?
And then, so that's where they've just placed the tower into the picture to create the simulation. And I think that is probably the most visible spot that we had, but we can, you know, go through all of them.
This is from Methodist Hill.
Yeah, that's what I saw. So
there's the balloon there.
Yeah. And so again, you can see it.
And that's a similar picture to what you had taken.
Yeah, I'd like to, I mean, we'll go back and forth, but if the person who were taking the picture had moved 3 or 4 feet to the right, the tower wouldn't be obscured by that branch. So that's a comment I'll make with another picture that I took.
Do you have the alternates? Yeah, is that what you took pictures of, dude?
Where is this? I zoomed it up a little bit, but this is somewhere on, this must be Methodist Hill, coming down,
Scroll down here a little.
coming down Methodist Hill.
I forget which number we're at. That's number 4.
No, we're on number 12.
No,
No, yeah,
total.
talking about, yeah.
Oh, spot.
Oh, I see, I'm sorry, yeah, good, good.
And so again, you can see it's here. It is what it is.
What's the name of the tower at the bottom?
So the antenna arrays are usually going to be, let's see, it's usually 3 to 4, so the array will be 5 to 6 feet.
And the pole shaft itself, the tower thing?
So the pole shaft wouldn't add to that because the arrays go around it, but,
Solid and dark. I'm just
yeah.
curious what the diameter.
probably about 2 feet, like, I don't know the exact design of this one. But the antenna arrays covered.
This is one of the ones that I took. And
Hold on, Peter, I just wanna bring it up for those other folks, it'll be there, I don't. You can see that. Just gotta share. Technology.
just, you can see I don't know, can you put your pointer on the balloon?
Oh,
Steve, so that people,
Yeah, I'll just-
the other people can see it.
Yeah,
so right there.
Yeah, just, so my question is that if that top balloon is 5 feet in diameter, the distance above the tree line is whatever it is multiplied times 5. It looks like that must be 30 or 40 feet difference. And this is from a site which you guys didn't take a picture from. And do one more.
I don't know that that's correct.
I beg your pardon?
I'm not sure that's correct because the trees might not be right where the tower is.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Like, I just don't know.
This is the one, you could put the pointer on it so people at home can see it too. That's stepping 3 or 4 feet to the right of where your folks took the picture. And again, I don't know, I guess, where the tree lines are exactly relative to where the thing is, but it's certainly well above the tree line on the ridge.
Yeah. And it does have to be.
30 or 40 feet. And the other question that I have is, and this is something that is exactly where the balloons are. When you put the arrays in digitally, why don't you go back to one of those, Steve, if you will?
one of his?
One of his with a.
Yeah.
Array.
Oh, it's not that one, it's this one. I'll make sure the folks at home can see it. Which one you wanna see, Peter? Any difference?
And the one where you can, this one where you can see the balloon and the array. We have to be back and forth. It might be 7 or 8. No, yeah, well, there it is, and then you can do the next one. Okay. The array that was put on there. Again, correct me if I'm misunderstanding something. If there are gonna be 4 antennas. That means that the arrays will be 30 feet. On the antenna. 10 feet between each one.
Okay, you're thinking vertical. I was talking about
And I'm
horizontal.
thinking vertical.
Yeah, so there would be,
And what you haven't, that's not 30 feet. You haven't given us a digital picture of what the array is gonna look like on the pole.
So the idea is to put more arrays on the pole and that
Well,
would
I mean,
change it?
the visual is supposed to be depicting what it's gonna look like, and that isn't what it's gonna look like.
Well, so initially there's one array. And then each carrier, as they lease space, will lease another array.
Okay.
So, you know, if the thought is that you needed to see. More arrays on that,
Well, so what I've thought, actually, you're confirmed, is I just want everybody to understand that that's one array versus four.
right, the idea would be to put four on.
And so there will be three more stacked below it. Okay, I wanted to understand that.
That's the topmost array in
Yep.
any case, right?
Yes,
And the antenna is 5 feet above that, but I mean, and that's one of the things that was in one of your things, they defined the height by the top of the antenna rather than the monopole.
Mhm.
Okay,
and then with that, I think the other request from the board was, or actually we confirmed that we would be doing this under variance criteria, and so I submitted a narrative addressing that criteria, and I'll flip through it and go through that in a little bit of an abbreviated form. Gets there. And again, remembering that there's a federal law and a preemption component to this as well. Excuse me, such that if you cannot meet the state law variance criteria, federal law will preempt if in fact it amounts to a prohibition of wireless service, which has been found to mean that if this is the best place to address this gap in coverage and it gets denied, then that is a prohibition of wireless service, and that's what federal law preempts and prohibits. So with that, I will go through the variance criteria under our state law. And criteria 1 and 2 are frequently considered together. Our courts have been doing that now for a little over 20 years because they are pretty similar. Criteria 1 is that granting the variance will not be contrary to the public interest. Criteria 2 is that the spirit of the ordinance will be observed. You put those together because the spirit of the ordinance is naturally to be in the best interest of the public. So with that, our courts have held that you determine this by determining whether whether there is some sort of threat to the public health, safety, or welfare. And B, whether this would change the, I'm gonna quote the words of the court, the essential character of the locality unduly and to a marked degree. That's the guidance we have. And, you know, my position on this would be that there's certainly no public health, safety, or welfare issues here. This doesn't in fact use any resources of the town or the state for that matter. In terms of altering the essential character of the locality, unduly and to a marked degree, I think the photo simulations do the best job of explaining that. Yes, it is visible. It cannot be accomplished with an invisible structure. However, it's not unduly visible, and it's not to a marked degree. You can see it if you look for it. But I generally would think that most people would not notice this unless they're looking for it. The third criteria is whether or not substantial justice would be done. Sorry, was there a question?
I had a question about something you said earlier. You said that the mill was significantly lower in
Yeah.
elevation, but Hatch Orchards is not at the same elevation as the mill. So you applied the lower elevation of the mill to both alternative sites, whereas the Patch Farm is much higher.
Did you download the submissions that were on the web?
You have it to the right location.
What's that?
You didn't use the right
I
location.
used the location you guys gave me.
I said Methodist. Methodist Hill all the way to 11 Patch Farm.
The locations that I looked at.
That's much higher. So
Okay, we're going off.
Off now.
There's a topographical map. If you look at that, you'll see there is virtually a wall. Okay, so take a look at the map that I submitted. I think that answers the question. Getting back to the variance criteria. Substantial justice would be done is our third criteria. And courts have found that that involves a balance of the benefit to the public in literal enforcement of the ordinance versus the detriment to the application of literal enforcement. And here, I think that's a pretty simple one in terms of the detriment. The detriment is that the gap in service cannot be addressed. The benefit to the public, is again answered by the photo simulations. That benefit would be not seeing the tower. I cannot really think of any other benefit. So you have to weigh that benefit. Federal law has already weighed that benefit for us to a large degree, but that's a subjective test. I think it pretty clearly comes down in favor of providing the wireless service, but again, that finding of fact is up to the board. Fourth criteria is whether or not the proposed use will diminish the values of surrounding property. Now, there hasn't been any sort of evidence presented that would suggest that it would. Now, what I can tell you is about 20 years ago, when I started in this business, a lot of people would argue that, and we would go out and hire appraisers, and we found the exact opposite was true. And we're finding that more and more, that the lack of this service diminishes property values quite a bit, especially with the demographic of people under 40, which really are the sort of next generation of property purchasers. Not having this essential service, a service that we literally use more than running water, is something that people consider when buying property. And if it's not there, it tends to lower the value of the property. So I think it's very difficult to articulate how this could actually diminish any property values. And the fifth criteria is that special conditions exist such that literal enforcement of the ordinance results in an unnecessary hardship. So here, the special conditions are what we've been talking about all along. We have this alternative site analysis where we looked at several different sites, we look at topography, and we come up with the ones that could possibly work. And we've determined that really this was the only one that could work with a landowner that had interest. So that's the special component. And then the hardship component is simply the inability to provide the service, to fill the gaps in coverage. And then if we're considering whether the use is a reasonable one, in this case, the use itself is something that is allowed in several other districts, and of course, it's used by almost everyone. I hesitate to say every person, but almost everyone uses it. So hard to conclude that the use is not a reasonable. So I think that covers the state law variance criteria to make the findings necessary to grant the variance. But again, if those findings are not made by the board, then it becomes a determination of whether prohibiting this and denying it amounts to a prohibition of wireless service. I think we've shown that it has, because there are not other better ways to provide that service. I think that answers all the questions from last time, but I'm happy to answer any other questions anyone has from down the board.
Can public comment?
No. No, the public hearing is not open right now. This is just the board listening to the applicant. You're welcome to listen.
No, you raised the question.
I
just asked.
And I
Okay.
wasn't going to jump on. No, but that's not the procedure. That's not the way.
Okay.
My fault for asking.
Okay, got any questions, clarifications that we need here?
I'm ready to hear from the public.
I had a couple questions.
I have a question. I'm sorry, you have part of our requests are that we have documentation of, co-location customers. Do you have agreements with any customers to populate the poll?
Yes, but no, I don't recall anyone asking for that, but yeah,
Well, you can answer the question now.
yeah, oh, we certainly do. I mean, we wouldn't be building it without it.
And who are they?
Right now, Verizon is the first one.
So it's the only one.
The only one that I know of.
Pardon?
The only one that I know of.
Okay.
And I haven't asked the question in quite some time, so there may be another already.
I
I
mean,
don't know.
it is interesting that you have quoted our ordinances, and that's definitely one that's in the ordinance. Number 5. Under E, okay.
Oh, I wanted to ask, and this was referenced, with this, site map that you shared, the green is the sawmill that we talked about, that, it sounds like that to achieve the same coverage, that would have to be, if it's 300 feet down in the bowl and you're going 130 feet up from the applicant's property, that's, that would be a 400 plus foot pole approximately to get similar coverage from that sawmill property.
Roughly,
Okay,
which is not doable.
I assume a 400 foot pole is unusual.
Yes, I don't even think you can make a monopole 400 feet. It would have to be one of those big red lattice towers. Now you're lighting the thing up because the FAA requires something that tall, but it's not a practical possibility.
And then on this map, you had this blue line highlighted, but that's not the patch line, right?
So that's just, if anyone's used GIS, when you click your cursor on it to move it, it picks the lot. That the fact that that's highlighted means nothing.
Okay,
Yeah, sorry for that. Like, I could not figure out how to unclick it from the GIS system.
okay. Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that there wasn't confusion about that, because the patch land is all the,
Off to the right. From the east.
right, is all off to the right, and it's so big, I kind of have to zoom in. But the sawmill lot and the lot that were highlighted are down here, so this is all the patch land up here, and you're
Yeah.
reporting that you looked at all, you had your guy look at all that.
Correct. Yeah, I'm sorry if the confusion was from that blue line that's just insignificant. Again, that's where I clicked to move the thing.
But as you can see, the terrain, you can see the topography, it starts coming up. And you literally have a bowl right here, which is the valley of this brook. And this is all the patch land over here.
Yeah.
And again, this is all valley right here,
Yeah.
so it's the same rationale applies.
And I did not even think that random code line would be interpreted that way. But
No, that's fine, I saw the outline and just wanted to double check. And so like, the patch land, you're correct, does rise up to go up over Methodist Hill, so. Does the analysis include the easternmost edge of the patch land that is, up here where the Enfield town line would be at the higher elevation?
Well, we considered it to be within the bowl. I mean, if we wanted to go on the very edge, that might change things, but if you want us to run that analysis and contact them, and the question becomes, is that better in some way? Does that address a concern of the town or the board?
Right, well, I mean, the fundamental issues we have, the proposed site now is a place where cell towers are not allowed. If this patch land were available, if the patches were willing to do that, that would be a special exception in Lebanon. And then we might be looking at the trade-off between how much reduction in coverage does that create versus putting it at the proposed site. Or if there's a two-site solution. I've read some case law where two-site solutions have been adopted, where one site wasn't ideal, so I don't know if we can talk about that at all.
Yeah, well, a two-site solution doubles the cost. So it has to be a tremendous benefit, and that's why I was asking, you know, what the benefit is. So if the benefit is merely the form of relief, that to me is not a tangible or practical benefit. You know, what I'm getting at is if it were to move to that location, let's say provides the exact same amount of coverage, so theoretically, we move it to that location. What concern has it addressed? Is it less visible there? Is that, you know, like, what are we going for by putting it there? Do we think it would be less visible there? I mean, I don't know.
I think it would be equally visible, probably just in a different location and on a different side of the town
In a
line.
zone that's.
In a
that's
zone
already
where it's-
been
where it's
determined
allowed.
Where it's been allowed, so
Right.
we're consistent with our ordinance.
Yeah, and so I guess that's where we, you know, probably differ in opinion as to sort of the significance of that as, you know, what type of relief is needed, variance versus special exception. To me, I'm thinking of the criteria that we're trying to address, and really what we're talking about is visual aesthetics here. So in my mind, it's like just moving it to get the same visual and same coverage, it doesn't achieve any
I'm
purpose.
wondering what the benefit is that we're working so hard to accommodate. Like, I haven't heard any data that says Plainfield residents need this coverage, or that isn't the relevant thing. Yeah, I see the coverage
Yeah.
map, but I don't know, is that 12 people? Is that 1,000 people?
No, it's 120.
Right,
Yeah.
it's a traffic corridor, and I'm
How far south
persuaded
does that additional
that-
coverage come?
Yeah.
Are we getting over the hill,
The yellow part.
or when we tip down over the hill, are we losing coverage?
Which hill? The hills
Well,
everywhere.
I'll say the hill in East Plainfield where, I don't know how to describe it.
I mean, I
Where
would
the
say,
big fancy brick, stone wall is.
I would say the best thing is to look at the coverage plots, because it's gonna be
I
hard.
mean, that's not coming down to there, here.
If you're going north on 120, if I'm reading this map
Right.
correctly. The new coverage starts a little bit south of Methodist Hill Road. And then up through Methodist Hill Road,
Right, so this road here is, that,
this is Croydon Turnpike off here, right?
yeah, so we're not, so the increased coverage south of Croydon Hill is going to be minimal. Is that what the map's representing?
I think so, if, you know, I'm going with what Matt's saying based on what's where, but I don't. We're.
See, can we put that new coverage map up?
Yeah.
Pull the audience.
Well, I think I wanted to back up a little bit to what you said prior to that, though, is that just trading for a new site that has the same coverage and the same visibility isn't worthwhile. But the federal exemption, the override requires that you've found the only site that's practical, and you've evaluated the rest of them.
No, that's completely not true, because well, think about that, so then no tower would be allowed if another site could accommodate it. It's never about finding the only site.
Well, then if there's another site that's equally as good, then you're not being denied cell phone coverage.
So then if I go to that site and get denied on the same basis, because there's that other site you didn't pick, like it doesn't.
If it was in a zone that allows it, we wouldn't be here. Or we'd be here for a different thing.
We'd be here for a special exception.
Yeah.
Right, and that's more in keeping with our ordinance, and again, I'm, without being a Luddite. I'm not buying all the premises that this is, but I haven't seen even an effort to convince us. That there is a public benefit that. That is greater than our violating our ordinance. That has been established, voted on by the public, there's a, a public process, there's some meat behind that.
Mhm.
I'm all for a little bit of capitalism, but not being sort of subtly threatened with federal legislation in something that tangentially applies, maybe, but not necessarily directly. And so I feel like the case hasn't been made. Who are we actually if we are to bend our rules and follow this alternate process? Who is it that we're doing it for?
Yep, no, I can definitely explain that, and that's a good point. And that's exactly where federal law comes in, because it's not about serving 12 complaints or 100 complaints. It's about making carriers compete with each other to keep making their service better and better. So it's not telling the carriers, hey, you have to wait until you have a problem in order to fix it. It's forcing the carriers to compete with each other to keep trying to make your service better so that the American people have more to choose from. That is what the federal law is all about. It's never measured by anyone's ability to make a phone call or if any one person has service. It's not measured at a town level. It's a matter of making the carriers try to make their networks continually better for the future.
Sure, that doesn't answer Dick's question about why it can only be here, and if there's an alternative, then the federal regulation wouldn't put it here.
So
We wouldn't have to do a variance, we'd have a special exception, which is a much different thing.
yeah, if in the board's opinion that difference matters a lot, I will look at that, well, I'll look at that side, I mean, that's not even in your town. We can look a little closer to the ones that are on the edge of the property. And we can see if they work and do that analysis for you. I don't have a problem doing that. But in terms of the federal law saying if there's another site that works, well, like I explained, that logically is not how it can work, because if, let's say you have a gap in coverage and there are precisely 2 sites that work equally to address it. Under this way of thinking, each site is a reason to deny the other site, so they both deny each other. you know?
No, that's not what we're
Not
saying at
if
all.
One is in a zone that allows it, and the other is in a zone that
So-
it's a variance.
Understood, and so you're placing value on the difference between the relief, and that's okay, that's fine, so that's the differential. We're saying that it is preferable to the town to have different relief, or in this case, it would be in a different town altogether.
Right, and I guess I'm wondering whose burden is it? Our burden to keep saying to you, we don't know if you've looked all around and found the best site. You're saying we found a site and that's good enough.
No, I said more than that, I mean, my materials.
Oh, sure, yeah, no, I didn't mean to minimize your work, I'm sorry about that. But what I'm saying is we can't point you to a site in Lebanon, but we haven't heard you discuss, here's the topography of this zone, the gap we're trying to fill, and we have looked at all of this irregardless of town lines.
That's exactly what we did at the
Okay.
last meeting. Like that's what that alternative site analysis I gave you, so we started out, and this is in tab 2 of the application, we start with a search rate. So we identify where there's a need for improved coverage, that's.
But is the step, the public outreach so Patch Farm, did it not hit your radar?
I don't believe it did because of how low it is.
It's not.
It's not low.
It's not low.
It's higher than the existing proposed site.
This is more work that had.
Can we please
So,
Stop with the public input right now.
so I think that's my point. And without having gone to a map and looking at Lebanon's GIS for property designs, my sense is the Patch Farm is on a height of land that might reach the area that you're covering and more. I don't know if it's an option. I don't know Lebanon zoning. If you tell me Lebanon zoning like yours, it would be a variance regardless. That brings it back into the realm of equal footing to me, right? But if it's not, then the general premise that communities create zoning and we try not to variance within those ordinances, there is a mechanism for it in cases, but we do this other thing. We allow it under a special exception, or it's a permitted use, but we don't have to get a permit. You know?
I completely understand what you're saying, again, when we looked at it, we looked at the bulk of those properties. As shown on that topographical map, is in a bowl, but I acknowledge there that the edge of the property is higher up, and we did not specifically consider that edge, and I'm happy to do that.
I'm trying to think of how to phrase it so that we don't do more rounds. I'm sure you don't want to do more rounds than we do, but the idea that how do we frame this so that the filter is on technical issues, and then once you find if you did that set of sites where that penetration could be done, and then looked at the zones and the ordinances that apply to them, it's like, what's the right sequence of filters to help you get to the point where we know you really have looked around and this is the one that the federal rule might apply to, right? Rather than wondering if that's just,
I can certainly do that to see if those areas on the Patch Farm can be viable alternatives. It's not hard to do. Again, we looked at it as, you know, sort of a big parcel where the majority of it is in that valley. But yes, the edges of it are up higher.
Just as a tack on for the alternative site question.
Yep.
I had asked last time and it was I think it was unresolved about site H on your original list, the Zero Methodist Hill Road with Huckins. I didn't know if you had ever heard back from them or gotten any response from them, up or down. Cause like for some of these, you had notes that the landowner was unresponsive. And for this one, H, it looked like the higher terrain blocks coverage to the south, so maybe that would necessitate a higher tower or something else, but I didn't know if that had been, if property H on your original list had been categorically eliminated due to lack of owner consent, like most of the.
No, that was
others
the,
on here.
well, no, it's stated right there. It's because it won't provide coverage to the south.
Okay,
So they wouldn't even bother reaching out to the landlord because it's not, or sorry, because it's not gonna do the job anyway, so it'd be.
okay, so that site was not. That site was initially considered, but was determined to be not viable, so there was no reach out there.
Right, and so to recap, maybe from the last meeting, sounds like it could be helpful. So we start with what we call search ring. There's a place where coverage is substandard that's identified, and come up with a general ring around that spot. And we look at all of the properties on the GIS map within that ring. And certain ones are ruled out right away based on topography or lack of access, things like that. And then we get to the next level. Okay, here's 6 or 8 or however many sites that could work, and they get evaluated, and that's that table you have there. Some get ruled out right away from a closer look at topography, realizing that it can't work. The ones that could, we send letters out to the owners asking if they're interested to get back to us. Usually people that are interested get back to us right away, and I have people calling all the time because for landowners, this is a pretty good deal. All things considered, I can appreciate that some people might not want it, but we usually, if someone's interested, we get a response. In this case, I think we're down to probably 1 response, which is not atypical in our business. That's usually how it goes, because we're down to not that many sites that can actually serve the coverage objective in a practical way. But again, this is part of the process where, as we dig deeper, between the public with local knowledge and board with local knowledge, that, you've identified something that may have some potential, and we're happy to look closer at it. When I left that last meeting, I distinctly remember it because I was asking, what is Patch Hill and, Patch Farm, whatever it is, and
Yeah, Patch Forest is that.
Patch Forest.
Farm.
There's Patch Farm, and then that area that's highlighted is Patch Forest, because that's their maple sugar.
Okay, gotcha. And so when we talked about it, I remember the discussion was it's all these parcels over here. We didn't have really specifics of it. And I didn't know exactly what I was looking for, so we looked at the GIS map and we looked at what we could identify as there's a single owner who's named on that. It's careful
Patch.
now. It's a
Patch is the owner.
no, it's a trustee,
Is
I
that right?
think, of a
See?
trust. And
They probably have their name in some different, their properties, not, I don't think it's in Matt Patch's name, I think it's in the name.
It's Patch Forest LLC. If
Okay.
if you want to do follow-up research, I would be happy to send you like a list of the lots and
that'd be great,
the
yeah.
owner, and you may get a quick up or down from
Is
them anyway.
Cole on that list?
There's coal
Yeah.
property in the area.
Right,
That,
I mean, if
Yeah.
you think about the coverage area that's missing, the majority of it is here. That whole ridge is all owned by the Coles.
Right.
But it's 1,000 acres. And so I would, if they haven't talked with Forrest Cole. They should, because he would be of a mind that I think he would think the revenue was a good idea.
So, and what zone is that?
Well, it's in Lebanon, so I
Oh,
don't
okay,
know.
I'm sorry.
But it's, you know, we're so close to the Lebanon line.
Okay, I'm
That
sorry.
if they are special exceptions in Lebanon, Patch and Cole own the tops of the ridges on both sides of 120 right there.
Okay,
I'm pretty sure I looked at their zoning map and it would be a special exception on their side of the
rather
line,
than a variance, yeah.
rather than a variance.
the Patch and Cole, tops of the ridges.
Right, it would be.
Now we're getting somewhere.
Right,
Send you a
well, I
list.
mean, it'd be Forest Cole in Lebanon and Walhowden Farm or Patch in Lebanon, and, you know, they both live in Lebanon, their homes are in Lebanon.
That's much of the patch.
Walhowden Farm is the Patches. I mean, they own a gazillion acres now because they do a big sugaring operation. But the farm is off of, is in Lebanon, and Forrest Cole and his boys all live in Lebanon. The family lives there. They don't live in Plainfield. So, but I'm sure the Lebanon GIS will have their addresses and how to reach them.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. All right, so we've identified those a little better, so I can take a closer look. Not a problem. I'm happy to do that.
If you're going to be doing more homework, I have an additional question that you may need to talk to your clients about. On tab 10 in your original submission,
Yes.
the site admissions report shows that the lowest height of the tower, which would be 4 carriers, the lowest of 4 carriers, works. So I guess my question is whether you need to have the tower be if it is determined that this is the only site. It is quite a bit above the tree line, at least from some perspectives. And a shorter tower with some spruce branches on it might be have less visual impact. And if the admissions report is correct, I assume it is because you submitted it, then the lowest site works. And if you had 3 instead of 4, then you could chop 10 feet off easily.
If you look at it carefully, the lowest site is substandard compared to the others.
It says
So
that,
what is kind
it
of
says,
loose.
I mean, I can, yes, it's not as good as the top one,
It's,
but their submission says, assuming the worst case scenario, which would not occur in the real world, it assumes that all 4 carriers are using frequency bands that are in the lowest height of the tower, and that they work.
It doesn't say they work.
Not all 4 at the same place, but the lowest site does work.
So that,
If you have 4 sites on your tower, you're not gonna sell one that doesn't work. The lowest one works.
not as well as
So-
the highest, but yeah.
That's fine. but we're not here. I mean, a 200-foot tower will work even better.
No, well,
Maybe, or maybe not, but we're trying to minimize the visual impact.
so the
And
question is,
if-
can the tower go lower?
If 3 tenants instead of 4 can be on the tower, it can be lowered by 10 feet. And this shows that the lowest level that you have projected here would work and would be acceptable to some tenant. Is that correct?
No.
No?
That doesn't necessarily show that. What you're looking at is an emissions report, which is designed to model what the emissions would be at the lowest level, because that's where the highest emissions would be. So they take the emissions of 4 carriers, put them at the lowest level, which is the worst case scenario, to calculate what that total exposure would be to make sure that we're still within the safety guidelines that the FCC promulgates. So we're talking about 2 separate things. The emissions report has nothing to do with coverage. Now, that being said, we designed it so that that bottom should be viable for someone. We do. It's not as good as the top, that would be the last one chosen. But yes, it should be viable for someone. So if you're asking, could we reduce the tower to a 3 carrier tower? I think your ordinance actually requires it to provide for the maximum of co-location. That's one issue. So you're deciding how much co-location do you want versus shortening the tower. Because at some point you could make the tower short enough for only 1 carrier, and then the next carrier is gonna come in and say, I need another tower, and now you have 2 towers. The second thing is that our state laws allow towers to be extended by right. So taking 10 feet off of, or would we have a 130-foot tower here? So a carrier can, or a tower company can add 13 feet by right anytime they want to. So we're kind of, I guess, getting into an exercise.
So we give you 130 feet, that means you can add another 15 feet just by right?
Another 13 feet,
And when?
10%.
That's a little unfortunate to hear.
Says RSA 12K. I think tower companies lobbied for that, carriers, that was that job back during the Obama administration, so 2013, I think is when that came out. My point is, I can look and see if a lower tower would be viable and worth doing. There absolutely is an economic component to this as to, again, can we provide coverage and do it in a way that's economically reasonable? I don't necessarily think that taking 10 feet off a tower automatically makes it unreasonable from an economic perspective, but there's a lot involved here. And I can answer that question, but I can ask.
You were gonna ask any question? No? No.
I was trying to look up some stuff. Matt may know this off the top of his head, but in discussions of the requirement, well, how many plausible sites can exist? I mean, if they don't have to show that it's the only site that could handle the coverage gap, how many sites do they get to choose from? Do you know what I mean? It's that was my understanding, and I can't find the references that I was looking back through the Vertex Towers in town of Hampton, and that wasn't really it. And I thought there was something that Matt gave me, and I can't seem to locate that had some relevance to that, so I'm still trying to work that out.
I'm shuffling my papers around.
It was in the, thought that was in the first case that we had, the,
Probably that Cranston.
Matt gave us that we discussed with Barry. Green Mountain or something,
GMR Holdings.
yeah,
Um,
I mean, part of the finding on there was that it was the only site possible, I think.
so I pulled some, now because it's been a couple of months, I forget what I pulled this from. I think it was from one of the state agencies had a section on summaries of zoning of personal wireless services. And it talks about what the effective prohibition standard is. And courts will find that a municipality's denial of a requested approval to put up a cell tower violates an effective prohibition clause, where the existence of a significant gap in coverage is proven, and there are no other reasonable alternatives to the carrier's proposed solution to that gap. That's the OmniPoint Holdings case v. City of Cranston, 586 F3rd 38, First Circuit 2009. In the First Circuit, the courts consider whether a significant gap in coverage exists. And then in determining whether the gap is significant, skip over that. And then you've got the only feasible plan analysis. The carrier cannot win an effective prohibition claim merely because local authorities have rejected the carrier's preferred solution. On the other hand, if local authorities reject a proposal that is, quote, the only feasible plan, that denial could amount to prohibiting personal wireless service. The burden is on the carrier to prove it investigated thoroughly the possibility of other viable alternatives before concluding no other feasible plan was available. The municipality does not have to show that alternatives do exist. The burden is on the applicant to show that alternatives do not exist. And that's Second Generation Properties LP, Town of Pelham.
Okay, that sounds,
So I think that's what I've been struggling a bit with like asking about the Methodist Hill property and asking about property in Lebanon is just making sure, because a room full, a neighborhood of people with concerns about it, I wouldn't want to give approval and have it be subject to reversal because we didn't put in the legwork to make sure that we had thoroughly investigated the effective prohibition element.
thanks, that's what I was thinking of, and that's what I was referencing. When you have to convince us that that's the only
No,
viable.
that is not right. I will tell you again, for the simple reason, all right, Cranston case, it was the only viable one. That's why they won that case. That was also 2009, a long time ago.
Was that, whose words were those? That you were reading about, saying that the applicant had to prove it was the only viable. That there were,
Those were citations to the court case, the OmniPoint, the City of Cranston, which was 2009. And the Second Generation Properties v. Town of Pelham case, which was what year was that?
You're asking for the reference to what you just read.
I can't, yeah,
Yes,
I can't find the first year citation for that. That might not be in the section that I printed. Obviously, you have to stay current with the law, so if there are newer cases that talk about the effective prohibition standard, like this is the black letter law that I printed out, and I don't even remember what year it's from, so I'm certainly open to hearing updates to.
Are you aware of
to that.
something that speaks to that, that's more recent, that heads in a different direction?
Oh, yeah, there's actually a lot. So there was a federal rule that came down interpreting effective prohibition from the FCC. This was back in 2019, which didn't give a lot of help, but it basically said that if the municipalities' regulations are creating, what's the word they use? It's kind of wishy-washy, but a substantial impediment to deployment, that would be an effective prohibition.
So,
They went a
You
lot farther,
well,
but, well, hold on, but let me explain why, because this gets to what I was saying. in those first cases, it was the only way they could provide the service. But then people realized, well, wait a minute, this doesn't make sense because let's say we have two properties next door to each other, exactly the same, both can do the job the same way. So you're gonna deny this property because this property can do it. Then you can deny this property because this property can do it.
You said that before, and the answer to that is that's a false choice.
Mhm.
We're talking about the difference between a variance or a special exception. That's what we were suggesting was a relevant criteria, and I think that's legitimate. And you're free to respond with, there are no others that are not variances. Great,
Okay, so
then we move forward with that. But you haven't done that.
Yeah, I don't.
if that's what we're talking about, I'm in agreement with that. But what I wanted to make clear is that it is not on any applicant to prove that this is the only site that will do the job. That is not the law.
So you're saying that case law is outdated and irrelevant?
I think the words were probably poorly chosen because they were based on the case at hand without necessarily a lot of thought to what would happen in the future.
You could say that about a lot of legal readings.
Yeah, but it's pretty.
Reality, that's why the
But
law has
it's what we
changed.
have to work with.
But what,
We can't
It does
undo what
change
the
a lot
judge
since
says,
then.
so let's look at what, if anything, has changed.
what
Great,
Matt
bring that onto the table.
read was pretty straightforward. So unless that somehow is no longer valid, I still see it, read it as being straightforward. I mean, it clearly said that the applicant needs to prove that there isn't enough viable alternative. And
So I'm open to hearing another judge's more recent ruling, if that's the case, if it's out there, then that's what we would go by, but we're not the attorneys, that's what we have to rely on.
That's fine.
we're at a point though where the applicant is offering to evaluate a couple other possible sources of viable alternatives.
Mhm.
And I think that we're at a point where we need to see that information, see how that pans out, because that could change things considerably if it was discovered that there were very good alternatives just a little ways up the road.
Is there any way for us to incorporate, if we've learned anything about the visual impact, like that distance projected and to give him guidance
I'm not-
on any other submission, just saying, you know,
I'm not sure what you mean.
well,
Are you,
from certain angles, that would stick up and be quite noticeable, I
Yeah.
think arguably, and from many other angles, perhaps not. That because of where it's located, its geography, looks like it sticks 30, 40 feet above the tree line, right? There may be an advantage if he gets, in other words, the likelihood that it projects as high or higher might be something, wouldn't even be worth thinking about, right? Because it would then just become the same discussion of,
okay, I don't have a problem with the information that was presented to the board. I mean, we would need to form our own opinions on its effect on the locality and everything. But I don't think that's part of this discussion at the moment. Are you suggesting
I'm
that
just,
they
I was
should
trying
be
to
doing
save
something
rounds, if,
different?
you know, if we've learned anything from this round, can we incorporate it into what we ask him to do the next time? Because if we're asking him to do a couple
The
of
reason I asked about co-location is the other standard that we have. No higher than 10 feet above the canopy. And if he demonstrates specific characteristics, location, or additional tire height, we can give an additional 10 feet. And that seemed to me from the balloon test that it's more than 20 feet above what looks to be the canopy. And so that's why I wanted to ask about that, because then we could fall within that particular regulation if we end up with a variance.
That would be one of the things that would be included in the things that were being allowed.
So
I hear what you're saying. I don't mind just letting him come back with whatever he can find from looking around a little more.
Can I offer you guys a little bit of clarity on the canopy and a little bit of canopy, so. When you get into that, you have to define exactly where your vantage point is, perspective matters.
Mhm.
From third, fourth grade art, whatever, like, you can, depending on where you stand, you can make it look like it's 100 feet over the canopy. So when the actual canopy is part of the regulation, it's the canopy within a certain radius of the tower.
I think we've had surveys done of
Yeah.
tree heights.
Right.
Right, we've had, other tower companies have been required to do surveys of the existing tree height canopy. So that we could compare that number to the top of the tower.
And so that, again, there has to be a radius of where,
And
which trees.
that was fraught with.
Yeah, no, it's
It
never
was
easy,
Very difficult to.
but it can only be one measurement. It might appear to be higher, but there is only one number that it is.
But again, you have to set the radius of where is that canopy? Like, you have to define canopy in order to do that.
Yes,
Are we talking about the canopy within 10 feet or within a mile? Like,
my
in order to
recollection,
do that, you have to set where the canopy is.
my recollection was 100 feet, but I can't see.
That must be
find it.
somehow like responding to different kinds of impacts and impacts to immediate butters versus.
One of the application requirements is average height of vegetation within 100 feet of both facilities. So I think that's to determine the canopy. I think that was the goal.
So that's an
I think it's-
application requirement?
Yes.
Do we have that? I mean, you should get people working on that if it's a requirement.
The average height, I'll get you the average height. I mean, a tree canopy survey is something very different than what I just heard.
Well, it's just number 6 in the application requirements list.
So you want the average height within 100 feet?
I guess so. My recollection of the
It's not
other
gonna be
cases
useful
that were
information, but I'll
done,
get it.
it wasn't very useful. It was the only thing we had though to base the height restrictions on. But, and of course, they're gonna clear trees within that 75-foot square and some outside of that. So
What do you think the purpose of having it in the ordinance in the first place?
that's the size of it.
I know the purpose, but.
I mean,
because they talk about not going above 10 feet above the canopy. And that's how you determine the canopy.
Right, no, okay, so.
It's in a pasture.
I mean, this is a fascinating case because of the town line. Right, I mean, these are not even applications this board would review in the future. Some other board, some other group of citizens would be looking at it, so it may be a special exception in Lebanon. On patch land or on coal land and a variance in Plainfield on the land that we've had it proposed, green land in this case. And I don't know what the implication from a zoning perspective is of that. You know, I'm sure we're not to push these to other neighborhoods and to other
Right.
communities. On the other hand, it is just a fact. It's a special exception there, it's a variance here.
Well, I think so, if the defense, if it's because we need to make sure we don't be effectively prohibited, then I think one thing that we could now actually know is what's the relative volume of acres that we have in zones where it's permitted versus the zone in which we're suggesting it's not.
There's nothing that tells us that would give us useful information.
Well,
That
it would certainly, on the face of it,
It's relative to a specific coverage. gap.
exactly, it's
Well,
not.
I get that.
So it
But-
doesn't matter if you can allow it all over the western part of town. If it doesn't address that coverage gap, it's moot.
well, if
Theoretically,
you accept that, then you might as well just roll over and say there's no role for us here. It's all gonna get federally preempted, and I think that's ridiculous.
Mhm.
I wouldn't say it's quite that far, but.
You'd like us to believe most of that.
Well, no, because it is correct to say that it is site specific, so I'll give you the example, like strip clubs, right? Every town wants to ban strip clubs. But you can't because it's a First Amendment right. So you're allowed to say, hey, we don't prohibit strip clubs, they're allowed only in that corner of town. Right? That's different than what we're talking about, because we're trying to provide coverage here, you can't. If you say, well, we don't allow you to provide coverage here, you're allowed to provide it only here, over here only, that's the effective prohibition. It's, as you said, it's site specific, it does matter.
Right, and I think at this point, what the board is trying to do is to find out what are the quality and availability of other sites.
Right.
And a circumference around this area that has poor coverage. And it just happens in this case, that
We
falls
don't
into
control-
Lebanon,
we don't-
where it may be a special exception.
Right,
Well,
right, we need to be convinced that this is the site.
Right.
And I'm happy to look, I mean, you know, to be clear, unlike a lot of people that would come in, I have no vested interest in this particular site. If there's a better site that works as well for us, yeah, we'll do it. It's better for us too. You know, it's not like I'm the landowner trying to do something on my land.
Right.
We will take whatever is the most viable site. That's just good business. It makes sense.
so how do we move this forward?
Well, I think we need to, probably continue to next month, when hopefully we'll have some.
Right, are you gonna
let
these guys talk? I mean, they've
Well,
come.
there's,
Nothing to talk about.
Well, but there might be a nugget that would lead to something else and save him having to come back another night.
I would like to hear from the public about the balloon view and stuff.
okay, all right,
It's
that's,
just my personal preference.
yeah, that's okay with me.
Let's do that.
I'm just trying to get a scope on what we're talking about here, because we want to try to limit public comments to, the,
Yeah, so in my mind, this effective prohibition issue, and I found that this is a 2026 District of New Hampshire Federal Court case that our town attorney sent us. So it's more up to date. What this still says is if you can establish the existence of a significant gap, plaintiff must also show that the proposed cell tower is the quote unquote only feasible plan to remedy the gap. If the municipal defendant can point to one or more feasible alternatives to the plaintiff's proposal, there is no effective prohibition. Stated differently, a plaintiff cannot, quote, insist on one ideal way to provide service. The TCA, Telecommunications Act, requires it to consider alternatives more palatable to local zoning authorities. Like finding a significant coverage gap, whether a proposed alternative is a feasible way to close the gap is a practical, fact-intensive inquiry. So to reiterate what I said before, I think it's important to look into the feasible alternatives as a way of putting in the legwork to do the fact-intensive inquiry. If we're gonna be asked to ultimately find that we need to grant a variance on this site. Because there's an effective prohibition, because I think that's the only way, well. The way I'm thinking of it right now with the hardship criteria. I think that the thing that short circuits the hardship criteria and jumps us to the federal preemption is. We have to do this, we have to grant the variance and damn the state law variance criteria. Because we would be effectively prohibiting cellular service in this area if we didn't grant the variance.
I just found my copy that I'll read through it too. Okay, so we can reopen the public hearing. And
And if you do say something, if you just state your name, it would be great.
right, and we don't want to start all over again. So we'd like to address the materials, particularly probably the balloon test. And I don't want to get too deeply into site selection again at the moment, because we'll have another opportunity when we have more information. It doesn't make sense to go through too much of that when you know there's more information coming. So it'd be better if we have all the information available when we rehash that, so, obviously, if you have suggestions about other sites or things like that, I mean, we've brought up some here, but, there may be others, but try to keep it fine tuned in your comments. So, do we have any butters that,
I'm not in the butter, but I'm 2 Broadways down.
well, we'll start with the butters.
All right, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Brian.
Yeah, Don Can of Butter. This is round 3. You all have a stack of papers you reviewed, which we appreciate. Tonight, we just found out we may not be voting on a 130-foot tower because the cell company, as I'm understanding it, can add an extension once the tower is approved. Is that what I'm hearing?
Not in our ordinance.
But please,
Check,
I thought,
RSA 12K.
I thought it was just stated that once the tower is in place, the cell provider can add 15 feet.
That is true. I would suggest you check the statute. It's a little bit more nuanced than that, but
Okay.
it's RSA 12K.
Okay, but what I'm saying is we're essentially possibly voting on a 144-foot tower, which negates the current balloon test, from the way I see it. And I'm a little surprised that we found out about this at the 3rd meeting. And I'm also concerned what other special things could happen that we don't know about once this process is complete. And that's all I have to add.
I think I'm the only other abutter here. I would echo Don's comments because at each of these meetings, we see that they have not fully prepared or done their homework yet. They've misrepresented some of the things that they have presented. And we're just learning that, okay, here in Plainfield, it's harder to get this zoning done where it would be in Lebanon, which is where the service is missing. The service is basically missing in Lebanon. And they haven't even looked in Lebanon to see if there's a place to put that tower. So, according to the last meeting when we were here, there were like 5 other sites in Plainfield that they looked at. And someone confirmed that they own 2 of those sites and they were never contacted. Has there been any follow-up to that? Because someone owning 2 of the 5 sites that were allegedly contacted said they were never contacted. Because my impression just sitting here is that this company does the absolute least. Because every time they come here, they're completely unprepared. And they misrepresented over and over again. So I believe they're saying now it's not gonna have a light on it. But once it's there, surprise, there'll be a light on it. Because you can't trust them. That's what I'm saying. And they move the goalposts all the time. They always come unprepared. And so I hope you consider that. I know a lot of work's been done, a lot of practical thought has been given, and I really appreciate that from all involved.
I'd like to answer some of those.
Okay,
So I take exception to someone telling me I'm misrepresenting and that I'm unprepared and that I'm moving the goalpost. I have been 100% completely accurate with everybody here. I am not applying for a tower that is larger than what is here. I have told you what the state law says. I do this for a living. I understand that people think they will weasel their way in with some sort of argument. But to call me a liar and unprepared, I'm not gonna listen to that.
So the people who were here that said you did.
Talk to the board, not to me.
The people who were here that said they weren't contacted, was there any follow-up to see whether or not they were contacted? Or did we just move on?
and if they got a letter in their mailbox that they threw right in the recycling, how would we be able to prove?
These are
one
not
way or
people
the other?
whose character is in question. These are good people that were here, and I don't know why they're not here tonight.
let me answer that question. That property owner would deny a tower. And that was stated at the last meeting or subsequent to that, but that particular owner would deny a tower, so that's a lot that would not be usable.
But we established that.
You're right. At that meeting, it was determined that some of the things had not been adequately looked into. But he says he's looked at them since then, and that particular example you're using, has been taken care of.
Well, I mean, it comes back to the question of, are they misrepresenting the situation? And I think that what I've seen, and I don't know, but what I've seen is they're unprepared and they're willing to misrepresent the situation.
Are there other residents with comments?
It's just a couple of comments, Rob Healy, 2 driveways down from Old St. Joseph Road. The last meeting I was on Zoom and I raised the question, it does say in your application, 130 feet plus or minus. And I asked, what does plus or minus mean? And I think I was given a few feet was the answer.
I remember that.
Few feet, well, a few feet is a lot different than 13 feet. That was number one. Number two, basically, where it comes down for me, we're building a tower in Plainfield, a proposed tower in Plainfield, that is benefiting Lebanon and not Plainfield. It does benefit a little section of 120 right at Methodist Hill Road. I've looked at the maps. And it goes up to maybe Croydon Turnpike. But that's about it in terms of what additional coverage in Plainfield is gonna be covered by this cell tower. So we're proposing a tower that's gonna benefit Lebanon and not really benefiting Plainfield. I turn right from my driveway and I go all the way down 120 through Meriden Village without being able to make a phone call. So why are we not looking at, why is not the company looking to better the service in Plainfield? Why we're taking care of Lebanon and
That's kind of the history of cell phone coverage. Some of the earliest towers we did, one of which is up on Freeman Hill, did virtually nothing for the town of Plainfield, and it was aimed at Interstate 91. That was the only reason they wanted to put it there, was because it provided coverage on 91. And there were a few people, a few places that got a little benefit from it, but not very many. That's the nature of the beast. It's a business. They want to make some money. And we're not able to even single out, if we're gonna allow a big box store in Plainfield, we couldn't say only Plainfield people can shop there. You can't do that. I agree, there isn't a lot of benefit directly for Plainfield people from this tower.
but
I don't think
it's
we can-
affecting the people in Plainfield.
Yes.
The people that live there, we are affected more than anybody else.
Yeah.
And that's just, I think, should be a reason to,
Now,
a reason.
Ned, is this something we need to consider?
Which part?
That was a letter. I'll ask it in public.
Okay.
There was a letter from an abutter or an interested, I'm not sure what she was using, a butter. Anyway, she asked about whether FAA determinations were required as part of the application, and I don't know. She claims that it is. And I just want to answer all make sure that everything is discussed. We don't, and next meeting, we have all the information we need. You didn't read this?
Do you know the height at which FAA gets involved in obstacles on the ground?
Yeah, it's not based on the height of the tower, so what you do, we have to do this anyway, we have to go through a federal NEPA screening before we can construct this, so it's based on the location and that elevation, the proximity to an airport and the flight paths.
Sure.
So what you do, there's actually a database, I think it's called Tau Air, it's a lot. You plug in your GPS coordinates and you plug in your height, and it will basically say if lighting is required or not.
And the answer on this tower at that location, at that height, with or without the 13?
No lighting. Not
No.
So you've done that.
It's before we would do that preliminarily before we even spend any money designing any of this. I didn't see that in your application requirements.
No, well, that's why I asked Matt whether it was something, because this person alleges or says, excuse me, that the application should include either an FAA determination of no hazard or a completed 7460-1 filing or documentation with other airport authorities.
Yeah, we do have to do that at the federal level.
But you're telling us with certainty it's not a tower that ever gets lighted.
Yeah, no,
Whether it's 130 or 140, it does not qualify for lighting.
it's not even close. We wouldn't be doing it if we came in on the realm of possibility.
So I have a question. For the board. We've been talking about canopy and height. And if they build a cell tower, and then do they have to cut any of the tree line that's going to expose it more? And is there a way to make sure that heading south, the tree line that's there is still there?
Volcano starts in 2 minutes.
So that, I'll take a stab at that. For one thing. If this tower is approved by the zoning board, it would still go through site plan review, correct, Steve?
Yes.
So. Site plan review is another step where the planning board would look at specifically like where the tower goes on the lot. How far it is from the property lines, what's the screening at the ground level with fences and
Because I was
everything like that.
thinking, you know. And typically, just so you know, the tower is further along in its process if it gets the site plan. There's gonna be a tower, but it might be some nuances that are changed. So it is another bite at the apple for concerns, but this is the most important bite because it establishes whether the use is there or not.
But I was, because my driveway is right there. And it was like, well, if those trees are gone, I get all of
Your
it.
question. It's a going out, you can keep that.
I have seen this, thank you.
Yep.
That would be my only comment at the moment. How long ago did you contact all these people?
I don't know, I wasn't me personally.
But you're sure it was done.
My client told me it was done.
You're over here.
You
Non-strict envelope that most people would just probably
Did you put the names
see
on
it
it and stuff?
and toss it in the recycling like somebody said.
It was you that contacted them?
No, I did not contact them. They sent me a letter, basically, dear occupant landowner. And I happened to open it, no different than a lot of landowners get mail from loggers. I get a lot of loggers that send a thing to me, nondescript, saying, dear landowner, I'm a logger, I'd like to log your property. That is how I got this piece of paper from Vertex Tower that I almost threw actually into the recycling, because I'm like, what the hell is this? And it was over a year and a half ago. So.
So what I can tell you. Been accused of this before, it's not a novel argument. You have the list. I'm just trying to remember what tab it is. Go ask your neighbors. See if they're
You've been
interested.
accused, you've been accused before of not contacting the alternative sites?
Yeah, all the arguments you make, everyone makes them, you weren't the first to think of these. You have access to that list, just contact them, if you don't believe it is, okay, are they interested?
No,
Well, what are we talking about?
no, some of them weren't contacted.
Are they interested in hosting a tower?
That doesn't mean you
Yeah.
don't contact them.
Yeah.
I think it's time to.
Right, it's probably better, I mean, there's no,
We're going nowhere.
right, well, in the Plainfield way is to be simple, let's just, and let's not get chipping at each other, there'll be plenty of time. Let's just work through it, I think the board is very diligently working through this application, it's gonna take some time, but we're gonna get as much information and that we can possibly get for
Okay,
these
so
guys to decide.
we'll suspend the public hearing again. Because we're supposed to get more new information and would like to give you folks a chance
Now that's, just to be clear, I just wanna make sure everybody's good.
Is there anything
That,
else on-
our next meeting is July
Oh, yeah.
13th.
Well,
Will you be ready for that meeting?
Should ask.
Yeah, absolutely.
We didn't check to see if there was anybody, any abutters or residents online that, on Zoom that wants to.
Donna's
Offer
not, and
next.
Dale's not.
Are there any comments from folks online that they would like to add? Understand that the three of you are all muted, so now you have to unmute.
They're all watching.
So here comes
Heidi
one.
Wilson here. I am not an abutter.
Are you a resident though? You can comment if you have something to say.
No, I'm actually on the planning board in Orford and I'm here for, just to educate myself.
Oh.
Welcome.
Okay.
All right. Then once again, I'll suspend the public hearing.
And to be clear, make sure, I think I can read a calendar, although some days I wonder. Monday, July 13th at 7 o'clock.
You're gonna be retired by then.
No, that's not till next April.
Oh, you've got a date now.
Oh, I definitely have a date.
You're retired?
You're a little giddy.
I'm sorry, sorry, a lot of Monday nights. April 2nd of 2027. And so, I mean, assuming we find, it's another story, but yes, not going anywhere as long as they need me, like to be done April 2nd. And I mean the Board of Selectmen when I say they.
Okay,
So-
13th of July. That's
Yep.
not a Friday.
So I say we continue this meeting till next month, when we'll have some more information.
I just ask for clarification on my homework list to make sure that I'm prepared.
You're supposed to get some things from,
Thank you. Thank you, guys.
Yes. Good night, thank you.
I will send you the list of the patch lots and the full lots that I'm aware of, that are special exception areas of Lebanon.
Good.
I'll send
you on my list.
Cool. I'll send you the case sites.
Oh, yeah, that's just
That I read.
curiosity, that's not.
Yeah,
And then I had a question as to whether we could drop the tower 10 feet. And you want the average canopy height within 100 feet.
Well, that's what the ordinance says.
Okay.
I don't think we found that particularly useful the last few times. but
Right, well, although
we
I think
tried to use it.
What I'm remembering
We did it, yeah.
is that there was a visual analysis of the horizon in the tower. And the person who had put a line, right, and said, here's average, and then here's heights of these trees. The tallest one that will stay next to the tower is 100 feet, or whatever the number was. And so it gave you an average, it also gave you the heights of the most prominent trees on the horizon.
And what I was saying, and if you look at one of the pictures that I took, there are some scraggly spruces which are above the line. And if they put some branches on it, it would be just like the other spruces, even though they look weird.
I've never seen any of those that look anything like the trees.
All right, but we should, are we good there?
So,
And then the last piece of business I had for you, because God, we love these Monday nights in June, and yet we've added another one.
clearly said July 13th is the.
July 13th, yep, yes,
Okay,
at 7 PM. On June 22nd, we are requesting information from
Mr. Koff.
Mr. Koff, and I touched base with him a week ago to see, one, had he come up with another idea, what was he up to? I could read you his email, although it may get you thinking about his case in a way you don't want to think about it yet. But what I would like to be sure that I convey to him, because he still has 2 weeks, is what would you, I mean, one of the things we talked about, I want to be clear with him, because that sometimes, I think you asked for his builder to show up, or for him to bring testimony from the builder as to the quality of the building before he started working.
And how the decision was made, yeah.
What's that?
Are you guys talking about a new case right now?
Yeah.
Yeah, a different case.
If I can leave.
Oh, you can head down the road anytime, but you're welcome to hang out and see what you think of this one.
Well, at night I get lost and there's no service for my GPS.
Oh, my heart bleeds.
And so it's,
Drive safe.
so what will be a useful meeting with Mr. Call?
What does this say? I mean,
Well, no, he's talking about some options and I can read them to you, but I don't wanna be conveying his case when he's not
Right,
here.
right.
I just wanna be sure I understand what would be useful to you. And what I remember us telling him, what our minutes say is bring your builder. I mean, obviously, if you looked into other options and decided I'm gonna do those other options. Then he wouldn't be coming back. He'd just say, screw you, I'm done. The other issue, he asked some questions about if he decided not to have it be an ADU, but given that he's got the building there now, what other use could he? And I don't wanna get into that if we don't need to. I just wanna know what you would like him to bring to that meeting to be productive. Whether you're gonna deny him or approve him in some form, what do you need that you haven't got now to know that?
Well, I mean, the obvious question is, what are you gonna do to get yourself in compliance? And
Well,
we don't really expect him to be able to, do that or accomplish it. But we'd like to know what compromises he would consider.
well, I mean, the other thing we wanted to know a little bit more about how it happened.
that was my
That was
focus.
the real.
That's why I wanted to
Talk with the
hear
builder.
from the builder
Yeah,
and from the building inspector, if available.
See, that's
Was-
helpful. I can certainly have Dave zoom in.
We went from the point where his permit was, he had to put his residence.
Right, something like an ADU that wasn't quite.
Inside that barn, because at the time he got the approval, the lot was undersized and there was no other way.
Yes.
So he had to preserve that. He started to preserve it because we were told, and it looked like it from the records, at one point, the existing structure had been raised up.
They poured a new foundation.
And
they
they
did
poured a new foundation under it. And then time gap and the building inspector goes back and the whole structure is gone.
Right.
So I was very interested in hearing how it came about that, oh, we can't save these beams or we can't save this existing
And,
structure.
and just to be clear, because this gets a little dicey with you,
Yeah,
where were you in this process? Were you filling in for Dave?
Yeah.
During,
this is early spring, Dave wasn't back.
so I mean,
in
did
town.
did you ever go when just the old building was there?
So I think I did back when the power was being rerouted to the house, and I don't know that there was any application at the time to do anything with the building. It was an odd thing.
I mean, I guess what I'm asking is, would Dave, who's the guy that's gonna have been there and said, oh, look, the building's gone? Was it you or was it Dave?
Dave said that in his notes in the.
Yeah.
Okay, so it is Dave. I will get,
This was fall 2025, right? There was some entries in September. And then I think it jumped to November where his note was building gone.
Right, because again, the construction sequence and when he gets called for an inspection, a lot of stuff can happen, right? That doesn't mean it's allowed. It means it's on the owner to understand where he's got to control his job, not the building inspector. And so,
I mean, and an interesting point, and I don't know, Matt, like in a bigger place like Lebanon. If the electrical inspector showed up and said, thought I was supposed to be inspecting a building that's a reno, this is a whole new building. But my guess is the Lebanon inspector wouldn't even know the zoning requirement, what the zoning issue had been.
well, he wouldn't have known anything unless it was some instruction. And our building permit process doesn't have a mechanism.
Right, it
for
says
giving
at
you
the bottom
instruction.
whether that was approved by the ZBA or not needed, planning board or not needed.
Right,
But but you've been part of this inspection process, and so I
right,
just want the
well, I
board to know
was the
that.
trigger that said, what am I looking at? This isn't what's.
Right,
in the
that's
file.
when I went as zoning administrator to the site and had my big Steve blow up with them.
Yeah.
Because it was just so different.
Well, at some point, somebody poured concrete. What I don't know is, and I'm wondering whether the tax card, George's stuff shows what are the dimensions of the original structure that he was supposed to stay within when he got his zoning approval the first time.
Right, I mean, we would argue about overhangs and L's and things, but George would have a dimension on the feature, yes.
And at that point, what is in the ground now? And put those two rectangles over one another in relationship to the property line, because at some point. He took on the initiative.
George, we know we have the new measurement, because George was
Right.
there, so I can
The old
compare, I can get
measurement.
you both measurements.
Okay, because it seems to me that if the reason we wanna talk to the builder is because we wanna know when stuff happened, right? The when that is relevant, I think, is.
When and why?
Because it was rotten.
Right, the why, you can get into the weeds, and I don't think that's helpful. At some point, and this is the point that the guy's got a responsibility to know the zoning ordinance and what he got approved for. And at some point, he either did not ask his builder, what are the dimensions that I see formed in here before we pour concrete? You know, it looks bigger, or somewhere he said, oh, go another 4 feet, because that'll make the living room better. I don't know.
But maybe we shouldn't debate the case.
Right,
We
well,
we are in
I
another
guess
session.
my question is,
What information would be useful to
Theoretically-
the board? For the next meeting?
I'm concerned with the why, because when he got the permit from this board, it was he needed to preserve that structure.
right,
And
and
they
it wasn't
started-
for an ADU, right?
Right,
So
no,
ADU law didn't apply.
right, at
He
the
had a
time.
burden to stay within the first permit.
So he lifted it up, right, and they poured a foundation underneath it.
Yep.
And my concern, and I think I tried to ask questions to get at it, was, did you not look at this structure before you started all this work? Because wouldn't a reasonable person, when you're proposing, I'm going to put a residence inside this structure because I have to use this structure, wouldn't a reasonable person look at the structure and make sure it's good to use and not rotten to the core before you lift it up and start pouring concrete and things like that?
Right.
Okay, and so back to the original question. Is it, Brad and I have both met with the builder. I have some questions as to whether his testimony would be valued here, but am I asking Mr. Huckhoff to bring the builder to the meeting?
I would think,
So
that
unless
we'd
he's
want to
got
ask him.
contemporaneous notes that says, I was authorized to do this on this date, which is really the only thing that should matter. Is like documents, because otherwise it's hearsay, right? They're gonna go back and everybody's gonna misremember or remember it in their favor. And you're gonna be left with nothing to poke at that has any substance. And we don't have anything to poke at. Because we don't have a series of pictures about this is what it was before we.
There
When
must
we
have,
gave
the
you the zoning permit.
contract must have changed dramatically.
If there was one,
Right, and
Right?
standard, you'd assume the construction loan goes to change order, right? Like, hey, you
Right.
contracted me to do X and now I need to do Y, so here's the change order with the change in
It's not a
costs.
little change.
It sounds like it was more informal than that, probably.
Yes.
Yep.
that would be the understatement of the world, but that
but-
is where the way far more business gets done.
Sure,
In my experience, and that's 35 years of being a builder, who used a written contract and change orders, and everybody looked at me like I was cross-eyed.
right, but so if the applicant is saying, please don't make us tear this structure down that it turns out is illegal because we built a brand new structure too close to the property line. If I'm being asked to give them like a fairness, a pass on grounds of fairness, I want to examine that they're entitled to it.
I think as an act of fairness, asking them to bring whatever they want to substantiate their story,
Yeah.
fine.
Yeah.
Well, so, yes, I mean, well, I got the feeling at the last meeting that there was traction. In his argument that we tore into this project, however naively we started. And in the process of jacking it up, as we did the foundation under it, discovered that the whole thing is rotten and we gotta rebuild it. right? I mean, that's the only argument that gets you to where he is today and where he wants to eventually be, is if you could have mercy on that argument, right? If the builder says, oh, right from the beginning, you told me we were gonna knock it down, well, and
First, I don't think you'll ever hear him say that, because he probably wants to get paid.
Yeah.
And I think the other piece of it that we don't have is like, I think it's really easy to understand exactly what happened. I think he got a permit because he looked at what he was allowed to do at that moment in time, and he was told, if you stay within this footprint, you can use that building because it's free, blah, blah, blah,
It
blah.
wasn't even the footprint, it was the building.
Whatever it was, okay? That was fine, and he went about his vision and plans and started building it. And then, yeah, they got into rot here and there, but I think at some point, he wasn't cognizant of the fact that we had some other issues in our ordinance that say it has to be proportionate to the house. It
now,
has to be-
how much value do you think there is? If you guys remember, and some of you may not have seen it,
Right,
if you're on Route 12A,
exactly.
where the tire place is, the new tire place, Fanfare Tire, Farm, whatever it is, tire, right there by where the Glen Road comes in. If you remember, they knocked the entire structure down, left the toilet. The toilet sat for a long time and then got a new building built around it. In this particular case, they have left the electrical service. It is absolutely in the old building, and you've seen it, in the new building is the old building with the electrical service connected.
Right.
I mean, is that a renovation if the space is the same?
But the space isn't, that's the thing, I mean.
Well, but
It was a shed before, it was never living space, and so now it's living space, so it's not the same in that regard. It may be the same footprint, I think he's at risk if his footprint is bigger than the original. So if we can document that there's some significant difference in footprint, then I think he crossed a line by expanding, and he blew away the good faith argument of I didn't know any better, and I was still trying to adhere to my initial permit, and I got it carried away. But because it's not an ADU and the ADU law changed anyway, I'm okay with my 12-foot ceilings and 2 stories and extra dormers and stuff. That to me was just a building permit wrong move. How did that ever happen? Well, it's
I mean-
because you only ask for a certain number of permit inspections, and so a lot can happen in between, and if they aren't told. If you don't ask them to submit the plan that shows what you intend to build, then you can't go back later and say you didn't build that, you built something else.
So I will try to get him to bring his builder. I'll see if he can bring the builder. And from a process perspective, as you guys have said, you would not order him to remove the building. You might just deny his application if you didn't think it met the criteria for approval. And so.
We can't order him to.
I was just gonna say,
That's
that's
a-
someone-
that's a
that's someone
collective-
As much as we might like to,
Right,
we
right.
can't.
Did Chris, I thought in Chris's letter, he said something about how I wasn't accurate the first time and I am more accurate this time. Did he look at the barn when it was there and how close it was to the line?
That is the strangest document I've ever seen from Chris, because Chris would ordinarily
I
give
mean,
you a
that was
map.
weird, yeah.
Just give you a map. We've never seen a map. We've seen a letter of average or something.
Yeah.
And so I think, but I do want to get back, we've lost track of it a little bit. I think I've got a better idea what you want to see at the next meeting, and so I will get him to bring those things. I think they are. My impression of working with him is that he has been an applicant who has been sincere with us, not particularly savvy with his building project. This project got out of control for him. And so I don't think he intended to misrepresent the town. I think in the end, he has built a very different building than what he had. And he may have thought it would either go unnoticed or that it wouldn't be the issue that it was, because it's materially the same size. It is definitely bigger. It definitely has dormers. It's not tremendously different than what he showed, but it is different. But I think I've not found him to be someone who's trying to pull the wool over our eyes. I found him to be somebody who's just busy with a bunch of
He
other
would do a
projects.
much better job of it if he was trying to.
Right.
Well, Paul
to
still has
Brad's
to live
point-
with it, the neighbors still have to live with this thing that is bigger and taller and more prominent than it should have been.
But at the end of the day, the reality is it is there.
But if it were 10 feet further
Right.
over,
then they would have to, because that's what we all agreed in our zoning ordinance.
Well,
Is there,
it would
is
make a
there any way
noticeable
to document
difference.
whether the
That's true,
foundation is
yeah.
different?
Is my point.
Yeah, well, George's measurements will be very accurate. We will know,
So before and after.
yeah, and I can get that to you as part of the packet at the next meeting.
Okay.
So let's,
That'd be great.
we probably yabbered on it about enough. I just want to be useful. I mean, the guy is clearly very stressed about what he's going to be doing to his building. Can he finish it as a residence? Can he use it as a shed and a barn? But again, not your issues. Those will go with the selectmen. I would think, well, no reason for me to speculate what I would think. Let's see where the ZBA ends up and goes from there. You know, Riverview Farm is changing ownership, so there'll be a different owners there looking at the building. It'll be the only thing they've ever seen. Sometimes, I mean, if you think about the details, how this application came through, the law changed right around it, right?
Yeah.
But that wasn't the way this thing went sideways.
No,
It muddied the waters a little bit.
well, only because we, I don't wanna say stretch things, but we, used a little imagination to get it in under a different
Right.
criteria.
Right.
And we did it for his benefit because you couldn't
To
do it the
help
way you wanted to do it.
To help it,
And-
absolutely.
And then the state turned around and said, you know, we changed everything so that he could have done it the way he wanted to
I
initially.
think the moral of this is no good deed goes unpunished. We
Yeah.
shouldn't have worked so hard to
Yeah.
help them.
Well, but that's our way.
I know.
We've always done that. And I mean, and the reality is, he's got $100,000 into a building that's sitting there.
Far more than that.
It's gonna be a minute or two before people ask him to tear it down. We just have to figure out what we do with it.
Are they looking into whether they can move it?
They are. And he's got some estimates for that and he'll share those with you at the next meeting.
Okay,
Motion to adjourn?
Yeah.
yeah, those in favor?
That's the second.
That's a second, sorry.
What about discussion?
The,